Welcome to this wonderful event in this wonderful venue, the swearing in of Chris DeRose as Clerk of the Superior Court of Maricopa County. I am Arizona Supreme Court Justice Clint Bolick. I am delighted to be your Master of Ceremonies, even though it is only 2 minutes since I learned that I was going to be playing that role. So, Chris gave me a partial list of all of the dignitaries in the audience, so I'd like to ask all of the VIPs to please stand, and everyone else applaud. No, seriously, we have a room full of elected officials, of members of our judiciary, members of the media, friends and family of Chris, and if I listed each and every one of you, there would be no one left to applaud. So welcome to all of you. I would next like to call forward a thoroughly distinguished person, but unfortunately in his place will be Attorney General Mark Brnovich.
You know, Clint and I are old. I don't even have to call you Justice Bullock. Clint and I are old dear friends, and because this is Chris's day, I will resist the urge to make any jokes at your expense, other than the fact that Justice Bullock did tell me today to keep this short, since I am apparently the only thing standing in his way at happy hour. So I will make sure you don't lose out on that wine special. Anyway, I do want to thank everyone for being here today, and I especially want to congratulate Chris. And it's such a great honor, great recognition. I know you work so hard on so many things you do, and your family, and seeing everybody here today. It's just absolutely wonderful for you. I do think that many of you, when you got the invitation today's event, probably had the same reaction I did. What the hell does the Court of the Clerk do? Or Clerk of the Court. Clerk of the Court. See, I can't even say it right. Where's Michael? I saw him earlier wandering around. Michael, there's Michael, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult the Clerk of the Court, but I know you guys do wonderful things, such as the Clerk of the Court provides court-related document records management and financial services for the justice system, the legal community, and the public, ensuring access to accurate court records and services. You are the Clerk of the Court, for those of you who don't know, is the statutory fiduciary of the Superior Court. It provides issues on a range of issues, including adoption, marriage license, divorce filings, name changes, passport services, child support, and literally tens of thousands of pieces of paper flow through the clerk's office every single year. So it's a very, very important job, and it requires someone that will make sure that they're on top of the processing all those documents, keeping track of all those records, and making sure the public has access to those records. So not exactly who the first choice was, but congratulations again, Chris. And I hope, it's been a while since I've been to an investor. I think last one was yours, Justice Bullock, that these really are supposed to be like roasts, right? So I just want to make sure that, I'm assuming that's why you included me. So let me just begin by saying, I'm sure most of you may know, in fact, all of you know, if you spend any time around Chris, that he is a best-selling New York Times author. He is very, very proud of that, and I can't remember a day goes by that we work together that I didn't know that. Some of his see, now you know why Jennifer didn't want me at her investiture. Some of his works include The President's War, which looks at the effect of the Civil War on Presidents Tyler, Van Buren, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, and Lincoln. Congressman Lincoln, who looks at the early formative years of Abraham Lincoln, and Founding Rivals, which focus on the rivalry between James Madison and President Monroe. I do think that it's really interesting if you look up some of the reviews. Most of them, almost all of them, are extremely positive. And like a lot of things, it's hard to find anybody that'll say a bad word about Chris. But like anything, if you look close enough, you can find some bad reviews. And I used to actually, I was always really impressed by the fact that he was a New York Times bestselling author. Until I recently saw some article that apparently the New York Times manipulates the way they do their bestseller list, and they exclude conservatives. So now it makes a lot more sense. But they, anyway, so as I was looking online, I know I'm never being invited back to one of these again, but I did find this, and my wife told me not to read this, but you know what, I'll do anything for a good laugh. So anyway, this was the only negative review I found on Amazon regarding his writing. And it was written, to be fair, it was written by someone named B. Berlin in 2011. It says, but this is the highlight of the review. It says, regarding the book, whenever I pick it up to read, I find the experience so painful that after a few pages, I must put this thing down. I am absolutely amazed at the large number of positive reviews. So, I mean, it's not that terrible, but it is a reminder, though, how important your family and friends are, because apparently the other 24 reviews were by people that were newer related to Chris. And I'm sure many of you might know that Chris was also voted in 2014-15 the Professor of the Year at Arizona Summit Law School. So it is something that I know he's very, very proud of. Once again, though, if you look a little deeper, and I don't mean this in any sort of disrespectful manner, because I'm actually glad ASU just let me in the door, because I'm not on the best of terms with them right now. So so I got to be careful. Arizona Summit Law School, though, they have 24 likes on Facebook. So they have 24 likes on Facebook, which is interesting, because that means that Chris received approximately 13 votes by the students in order to be elected Professor of the Year. Once again, I'm not good at math, but it is a great honor. So congratulations. So, and I really, it is really a testament. But anyway, once again, just by way of background, I think that most people know that, you know, Chris is from Illinois. That's where he grew up. He was always very active and involved in, you know, political campaigns. In fact, I think you were about 15 when you were involved in your first political campaign. He's been involved in, I think, at least 5 congressional campaigns that I know of. And he was, you know, he worked when I was running for office. He was there, you know, early on for me. In fact, Chris has always been around politics, and this is, once again, a true story. I'm watching the news Tuesday night, and at about 10:15 or so, they have the election returns coming in from CD8. There was a special election in the congressional district that Congresswoman Lesko won. And I'm watching the returns, and there's Congressman Lesko talking to the national news, talking to local news, and in the background, there's Chris DeRose talking to someone. And I'm like, my God, the guy's everywhere. He's like seriously, I go to an event, I'm like, why are you here? In fact, Chris has been to so many of my events. He actually made this joke the other day that I was speaking somewhere, and he's like, wow, he goes, that was really good. He goes, that was, you know, 15 minutes, because I said something like, oh, I felt a little off, I wasn't feeling good. He's, oh, no, that was good, 15 minutes. He goes, but I remember when I used to have to listen to you speak for 2.5 hours. Now that was much more painful. So, but he's at every political event, and I think this reference will make sense to some of you, but I congratulate you. You've now become the new Alberto Gutierrez of Arizona politics. We're seemingly everywhere at every time. And Alberto, I'm sure, is going to hear that, and I meant that, and I swear to God, in the best way, Alberto. I don't want you calling me saying, oh my God, you know. Oh my God. Seriously, you know it's bad. Okay, seriously, this is why I will never run for office again. You can always tell, but anyway. You know, he was, Chris worked at our office, and Chris has done a lot of great things in the law. He worked at our office, and then he took off to run for city council. And although that didn't work out, he was one of the two finalists, and he was in the runoff, and, you know, he did very well for himself. And it's, you know, like I said, I'm a big believer that's what is meant to be, and obviously that created the opportunity for you to become clerk of the court and serve the people of Arizona, which is, which quite frankly is probably better than being on the city council. I know Councilman Wearing's here, but you know, it's not as fun being one. Yeah, it's no. Let's get, no, I've just lost another endorsement. No, I meant like, you know what a pain that is. You're one of 7. It's almost as bad as being in the legislature. Okay, but no, seriously, I'm being told to wrap it up like the Academy Awards. In fact, before I came here today, my wife told me to not say anything mean and to be really short because no one wants to sit through these long events, and I think I've probably violated both of those rules. But I will tell you this, in all sincerity, and joking aside, I've been around Chris. I've seen him in political situations. I've seen him, work in our office. I've seen, as I said, him run his own campaign. And in all seriousness, I have never heard him say a negative word about another person. And in politics, especially, I can't tell you how many times people say something derogatory about someone behind their back, even their so-called friends, how many times they want to go negative and nasty and dirty, and instead of arguing or talking about issues, they want to talk about someone personally and, demean them, and Chris is not like that, and I think that's a testament to the fact that I honestly have never heard you say anything bad about anyone, and I think that's really, really unique. It's unique amongst lawyers, and it's really unique amongst people that are in politics. And I think that says something very special about the kind of person you are. And I know that I saw Jeremy Duda here earlier, and Jeremy, and I know you guys like to play trivia, and you've got your group of friends that you like to do normal stuff with, which is, I think, is important. It's important to keep grounded. So I do think that it's being positive and having that attitude is, quite frankly, I know that you're a huge fan of Abraham Lincoln, and not just because of Illinois and the stuff you've written about him. And they are good books. The fact that the East Coast and folks in the Washington Post and the New York Times write glowing reviews is really what matters, not what some guy from 2011 wrote. But Abraham Lincoln said, when he announced the first time he was running for office, he said that every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say for one that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men by rendering myself worthy of their esteem. And I am pleased to call Chris a friend, and I am pleased to say that you are indeed worthy of all of our esteem, and I know that you will do a great job taking over and following Michael. So thank you very much. Thanks. Good luck.
What a tough act to follow. Chris has asked me to deliver a few remarks as well before administering the oath of office, so I am delighted to do that. And I am just delighted but utterly shocked that Chris asked me to do this. Chris was a member of my team that I put together when I decided to apply for a position on the Arizona Supreme Court, and he helped look at my application and encourage people to support it and to moot court me for my interview, both with the Merit Selection Commission and then ultimately with the governor. And what was Chris's payback for that? Chris subsequently argued 2 cases before my court, and I was the only justice to vote against him both times. So, and then he shortly thereafter quit the practice of law. As judges know, correlation equals causation, and so I feel tremendously responsible for that. But seriously, Chris, I am so thrilled that you were going to be taking this position. One of the things that is the case with Chris and me, anytime I see him, it is never a short conversation. We have so many interests in common that each one of them could be an hour-long conversation. And we share a passion and interest in the law, passion and interest in politics, a passion and interest in history, even though he does most of the talking and I do most of the questioning. By the way, did you know that Chris is a New York Times best-selling author? Checking that off my bucket list, rubbing elbows with a New York Times bestselling author. We share a passion and interest in travel. We share a passion and interest in food. I don't know whether you would call us soul nerds or nerd mates, but whichever the accurate term is, it is that. Chris brings to this job a keen sense of history. If you looked at the job description for the clerk of the Superior Court, surely you would not see historian on the list, but perhaps it should be. One of the things I've really grown to appreciate about my friend Chris over the years is that he brings a deep sense of history to everything that he does. And he is keenly aware of the centrality, the importance of the rule of law in our exceptional nation. And it's not just the rule of law in an abstract way, but the rule of law in the everyday way, the way that the law touches each and every one of us. And I can't think of the number of conversations that Chris and I have had about the nuts and bolts of the law, the things that we have to do to make law accessible and fair to everyone in our society, and a keen understanding that it is that accessibility that makes the rule of law persist, that gives each and every one of us a vested interest in the perpetuation of the rule of law in our society. So this is, in many ways, the perfect job for Chris DeRose. And it's amazing that, first of all, it was evidence of his perspicacity that he has this position, because it was a very, very long road. But beyond that, he understands how important the workings of this court is to the people of Maricopa County. Unfortunately for Chris, he has an impossible, almost impossible act to follow in Michael Jeans, who I honestly can say is legendary in Maricopa County. But that has not deterred Chris at all. He has plunged into his new position with gusto. He has made it his mission to meet each and every one of the, I believe, 751 members of the staff of the clerk of the court. This is an extraordinary court. When my wife and I got married in 2000, and she gave me the edict that we were leaving Washington and moving to some place where it did not snow. One of the reasons that we picked Arizona was because I had litigated here, and I thought it was the best court system that I had ever practiced in the United States. That starts with the trial courts and ends with the Arizona Supreme Court. The integrity of our court system is absolutely second to none. And a tremendous part of that is the work that is performed by the clerk of the court. The judges perform an incredibly important role, but the clerk is the day-to-day contact with most of the people who have dealings with our court system. I see Judge Barton over there, who has done so much to make our county judiciary one of the finest in the country, and I am so glad that she will have as her partner going forward Chris DeRose. It is such an honor to swear you in today. I'm looking forward to a long and very, very successful tenure in this position. And I would like to call you and your amazing wife, Hannah, forward so that I can administer the oath of office. It's always difficult to figure this out. Please repeat after me. I, Chris DeRose, do solemnly swear
I, Chris DeRose, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge
and that I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
the
duties of the clerk of the Maricopa County Superior Court
the duties of the clerk of the Maricopa County Superior Court
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Chris. Congratulations.
Finally, I get rebuttal. Clint, thank you so much for everything today, for swearing me in. There's absolutely nobody else that I would have rather had in this position. Clint was concerned. He appeared at an event earlier today in Tucson, and he was concerned that he and the Chief Justice might not make it back in time. And he even asked me to have a backup judge. And so Judge Perkins of the Court of Appeals was here as a backup judge, but I assured Clint this would really not be necessary, because if I told Mark to go along, you guys could walk back from Tucson and still make it on time. I would just say, Mark, go along. But seriously, thank you all of you for being here. This is so wonderful to share this experience with so many faces, so many friends, both new faces from my short time in office as the clerk of the Superior Court, to old friends from many different chapters of my life. The last time I spoke in front of this many judges, you guys had a lot of questions for me. When I was in oral argument, if you go back and watch my oral arguments, it's always the same. A lot of you have either appeared in front of or have helped prepare me for oral arguments. I always tried to say something really provocative right off the bat to get one of you to interrupt me, because I would rather be answering your questions than just trying to anticipate what you're wondering about. So I would have to, if you had any concerns at all about my case, that one sentence, you wouldn't be able to sit past it without saying, wait a minute, and then I could answer your questions. But probably no matter what I say, I doubt I'm going to get interrupted today. My legal career for now is at an end. The clerk of the Superior Court, because they're impartial, is not allowed to practice law. And so they told me when you're applying, Chris, you can't practice law anymore. And I said, don't invite me to a good time. But I am looking forward to the day already where I get sued in my official capacity and I represent myself. And we're going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, and Clint Bullock is going to write the majority opinion in my favor. This is going to happen. Someday. This is amazing to think of all the people who are here from different facets of my life. When I first became a lawyer, and I officed with Chris Stewart, and I used to go into, I started a solo practice the day I got licensed to practice law, and so I was always in Chris's office asking questions. And Chris, thank you for helping me keep my law license for as long as I have, and for all the guidance in those early days in our practice in Old Town Scottsdale, where I first learned how to practice law and where I first observed the court system, either in municipal court or in the Superior Court for which I now serve as clerk. My mother is here. Mom, if you would stand up, I'd like you to be recognized. When my mom was my age, she was raising my sister and I, Dr. Catherine DeRose, who couldn't be here today. She was raising us by herself. She was responsible for her students as a teacher, and she was going to school at night. And whatever is in front of me day after day, difficulties, setbacks, challenges, I've always just had to think about my mom and how she always put one foot in front of the other and how she was always happy, because it really beats the alternative. And so I think about you every day, Mom, and I wouldn't be here without you, and I wouldn't want to be here without you. So thank you. My wife, Hannah, is here. My wife does really difficult things. It's not like being a New York Times best-selling author, like really challenging, difficult things. She's a breast radiologist, and every day she has a few minutes to look at a scan and try to find a centimeter of cancer on there so that it can be detected in time to be treated. And sometimes she has to give people the worst news they've ever had in their life, but they're very lucky that they get to be with such a caring and compassionate doctor. I love you, Hannah. I can't imagine being here without you, and so I'm so glad that you're here with me today. You know, in the short time that we've been together, there have been ups and there have been downs, but I've never had to worry about where you would be and you know, frankly, having you to go home to every day. This wonderful job and opportunity, it's a perk, but I don't need it to be a complete person, and I don't need it to be happy, and I have you to thank for that. You know, when I entered the workforce at age 13, and in Chicago, I used to take the train in every day, and I used to work in the circuit court clerk's office, my counterpart in the county of Cook. And I did a job that no longer exists. It probably still exists in Cook because of political patronage. It has not existed in Maricopa County for 16 years, I'm told, but I would grab a giant stack of papers every day, and I would walk through the stacks, and I would have to file them in the absolute lowest job in the office, and file them in stack after stack, and usually getting them in the right file. Carrying a 50-pound Walkman around, which was great for the first 2 hours of the day till the battery ran out. And, you know, starting off in a position like that in most places in the world and most times in history, that would probably be it for me. But I live in a great country, and I live in a place where my family, people I knew growing up, were able to come here from Italy, and were able to start a new life, not speaking the language, having a different religion than many of the people around them. And just a willingness to work hard and seek opportunity. And this country has been so good to them and to me, and I'm so grateful that I was able to live in a place where that effort and hard work and sacrifice and perseverance and maybe a little bit of luck where it pays off. And so I'm very glad for that. I see a lot of my students are in the audience. I got a lot more votes than 14. That was it was like hundreds. It's kind of like my city council race. You know, it was an honor to teach you guys, and I still think about all the fun that we had in the courtroom. Or in the classroom, rather. But actually, I would take them to go into the courtroom, speaking of which, because nothing would build their confidence like watching real lawyers in action. There was nothing that made them feel like they could do it, like watching people practicing at the bar. And it's great when I go into the courthouses now. I instinctively look up at the monitor to see which courtroom my client's about to get hammered in, and I don't have clients anymore. This is wonderful. But I do have over 700 wonderful employees, and I said on my first day, I want to get around and I want to meet everybody. And so that's pretty much what my schedule has been since assuming this role on March 22nd. Meet and greets at all the different courthouses: East, West, Central, Old, South Tower, Durango, Southeast, Northwest, Northeast, and meeting all the wonderful judges that our office serves. I'm so looking forward to working with each and every one of you. You know, I'm grateful to Governor Ducey for choosing me for this position. Getting an appointment's a little bit like running an election, but except there's one voter. And there's a lot of people here today who were willing to contact the governor on my behalf. We've got Rob Ellman, former Solicitor General, Mark Briggs. Let's see, who else do we have in here? There are a number of judges who reached out to the governor's office, but who must remain nameless because such opinions have to be shared in private, but I'm grateful to all of you. I'm sure no one can guess any of them. And let's see, so if this all so Bill Montgomery, who else? Paul Peterson, the assessor, spoke up for me. Both of them really wanted to have me as a colleague and were very vocal about it with the governor's office, and I know it made a big difference. Mark Brnovich got a reference call. Appreciate you saying nice things about me, Mark. That was it must not have been very long. Yeah. But, well, now you guys know who to blame if this all goes south. I did have one very important recommender, maybe the most important of all, and I wanted to thank him separately, and that's my predecessor, Michael Jeans. Michael, you spent 30 years building this office into what it is. I was familiar with the phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants, but I didn't totally understand it until I took over this job. So thank you for this trust that you have placed in me with the thing that you have given some of the best years of your life to. I promise you, as long as the people of Maricopa County allow me to continue in this position, I promise I will continue to do you proud, and I thank you for always being there when I want advice or need to learn about this large and complex office that I now run. So that's it. Thank you guys all very much for coming, and look forward to visiting with all of you after this. Thank you so much.